Hi, I'm Tracy Bevington. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and the owner and founder of Pacific Marriage and Family Therapy Network. And we are a group of private practice psychotherapists, and we've got offices in Sherman Oaks, Manhattan Beach, and Santa Monica. Today, for this Facebook Live, I'd like to talk about healthy marriage. This is part 3. We're going to be talking about parenting together. Before we get started, I'd like to please ask that if you're joining us and you have comments or questions, please leave them in the comment and question section. I'm happy to get to them. If not by the end of this session, definitely before the end of the day or in the next 48 hours. If you're just joining us, please just double check that your volume is turned on, that your sound is turned on. Sometimes it defaults to like transcription only, but there's actually sound here. And lastly, if you're interested in joining us, being part of our newsletters, or you want to contact us, there's a link at the top. Please feel free to click there to get in contact. So today, I'm going to talk about parenting together. So when we think about parenting, oftentimes people think about like, what's my parenting style? Or I'm going to parent my kids in this way. When you're in a marriage or any kind of partnership and you're parenting kids together, it's always about like co-parenting. Co-parenting is a term that they use for parents that are trying to parent kids when they're divorced or separated. But it's a lot of the same kind of information. It's the same method. When you are parenting, you want to be working together. Now, does that mean, you have to be on exactly the same page, exactly the same sentence, on exactly the same word with the exact same punctuation? That's just not reasonable. That doesn't happen. So I think a lot of people misunderstand that when you're parenting and you're on the same page, that you have to have this like identical thinking. You have to think the same. You have to have the same methods. You have to have the same everything, that your styles are identical. They are all like, it's all seamless. Like the two of you are moving through this parenting and there's no gap and there's no crossing. It's just seamless. I think also people think that when you're on the same page, that means you always agree. The thing about all of that is it's just not true, and it's not reasonable. If you're parenting and two people are parenting, you're always going to have some kind of a difference. There's going to be a difference in style. There's going to be a difference in what they experienced growing up, what you experienced growing up. Everything is going to inform how you parent your kids. Sometimes it's even a matter of what books you've read and that your partner has not. So it's not reasonable to expect your partner to be on exactly the same page, same sentence, same word, same punctuation. So what does being on the same page actually mean? Well, I like to think of being on the same page as kind of bigger and broader. So it's more like, do you share the same values? Do you share the same morals? Do you want to generally parent in a more traditional and conservative method, or do you want to parent in a more alternative and liberal method? Now, if we have kids that are growing up with parents that have completely different styles, it's not necessarily going to mean that they're doomed forever, but it's going to make it a little bit harder. So having some kind of like basic foundational same page like understanding is usually really helpful. So let's just assume that you have that. So if you have that, then what does it mean to be on the same page? Let's think of, I had an example that comes up a lot. So let's say you're spouse or partner, let's just say, you know, it's me, the mom. The mom is really upset because my son is putting dishes in the dishwasher incorrectly. As far as I'm concerned, it's done incorrectly. So I get really upset because I've told him many times, please, when you put the dishes in the dishwasher, make sure it's like this, and these go here, and these go there, and when you put this inside, it's turned this way, and for whatever reason, my son is not doing it. So I'm really upset. So I'm screaming at my kid, why can't you do this right? What's wrong? I've taught you, I've shown you, blah, 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 blah. So in that situation, for my husband or my partner, my spouse, would being on the same page mean, you know, you should really listen to your mother. She's trying to tell you how to be, you know, a good citizen. And she's worked hard to try to show you how to do this right. Is that being on the same page? Maybe not. Because if your spouse or partner believes that and thinks, yeah, getting angry at your son for doing that is completely reasonable and I support that, then you're on the same page by saying, you know, you should really listen to your mother. Sometimes being on the same page means, in that same situation, that you're going to say, well, Tracy, I'm wondering if maybe we could talk about this in a different way. Because I'm noticing you're really upset. It looks like our son is kind of upset. Let's try to think about, like, maybe we could do this differently. And son, maybe, yeah, okay, you know, mom likes to have things done in a particular way, and this is not the way that she likes it. And Tracy, like, I don't know, like, is it okay if it's not 100% perfect? Sometimes people think that that's not being on the same page. But ultimately, if you're together, your morals and your values are to teach your children to be proper citizens in the world and to make their own choices and to not be afraid to do things kind of outside of the lines, then yelling and screaming at them for not putting the dishes away properly, that's not okay. So by having this other conversation, we're trying to get everybody on the same page. The same page is, we talk about things in this family. That sometimes things that we feel are important aren't actually that important. Why is it so important to me that the dishes are put away in a certain way? They get clean regardless. So that's something for me to work on, not my son. And it's up to my son, right? We're trying to teach him to be able to talk to me and say, well, mom, you know, I'm not really, I don't feel good about this conversation. I could see you're really upset and I don't like it when you yell at me. So can we talk about this instead of yelling, right? This is the kind of conversation we want, although it's really hard to get. So being on the same page doesn't always mean agreeing. So if you see something happening and you're not okay with it because it is not part of the big picture moral and values that we're trying to instill in this family, then it's okay to say, no, wait, let's move over here so that we can be on the same page. But you can't just allow your partner or anyone in the family to be disrespectful or to be disagreeable or to be rebellious. That's not okay. So if you're noticing that happening in your partnership while you're parenting, we have to figure out how to get on the same page, how to have a bigger understanding of what are we trying to do here. And then the methods and the way that we go about making these things happen, they're going to vary. Undoubtedly, they're going to vary. So if I am So if I am uh, quick to become angry, that's something for me to work on, but that's something that I do. And I will try to stop myself, and I will try to communicate with my kids differently once that happens. But that still doesn't mean that my kids have to be okay with being yelled at. And my partner has to help me to understand that that's not okay, because that's not the kind of parenting that we want to do. That's not the kind of modeling that we want to make for our kids. So when you think about parenting as a couple, always keep in mind, what are my kids learning from this experience? When they have kids, what are they going to be doing to parent those kids based on what I'm doing right now? Because if you really think about it, everything that you do innately comes from what you've learned from your parents. So those things are the things that come up automatically. We don't even think about like, well, I read in this book, it said to do this and that. It just comes. So if we're used to being parented in a way that is pretty strict, and if we don't want to be strict, we have to really work at it, because what we're used to is something being very strict. So the automatic response is always going to be strict. So it takes a lot of work to parent, especially if you want to parent in a way that is very different from how you were parented. So being on the same page means you've got to really talk with your partner. You've got to talk to your spouse. You've always got to be checking in to see like, hey, like, are we on the same page here? Do you want our kids to go to college? Like maybe, and then it's like, well, do they go to college straight out of high school? Or, like university? Or are they going to go to like SMC or El Camino? And that's okay, because that also has a different perspective or a different method on how you are about homework, how you are about grades, all these different things. So if one parent is thinking, oh yes, my kid's going to an Ivy League school, and the other parent is saying, well, actually SMC is okay and they can just transfer, we're going to have a problem, because the parenting style is going to be very different, and we're going to have a lot of conflict. So when we're parenting, we want to remove a lot of the conflict. However, we have to have some healthy conflict if we don't agree, and we're not always going to agree. We also want to make sure that our kids understand that not everything in the world is nice and consistent and 100%, everybody agrees, and because that's just not reality. So when I think of this, I think of some time I spent at our local co-op preschool. It's called WPNS, Westchester Parents Nursery School. And I remember giving school tours for many years. We were there for like 6 years or something. So I'm giving the tour, and we would talk about the play structure, because this is a pretty tall structure. And sometimes the kids would want to climb pretty much on top of it. And this is when they were like preschool. So, they're like 2 and 3 years old. Some of them were 4 years old too. But some of them were very physical and very athletic. And they wanted to climb up all over this play structure. And so what we would tell the parents that would ask, well, are the kids allowed to go up on the structure? We would tell them, it depends. Because some parents, actually like myself, I was okay if they were at the top of the structure, as long as I checked in with them and said, hey, do you feel safe? Does your body feel like it's under control? You got this? And if they said yes, then I'm okay with it. But there would be other parents that just the anxiety was just too much. which is totally okay. And they would say, "Oh, Johnny, can you please come down? That's making me feel anxious. I'm worried that you might fall down and hurt yourself." And the kids adjust. They know that when I'm on the yard and I'm watching, they can climb up there because I'm okay with it. And that when this other mom is out there watching, she's not okay with it. And so they have to adjust to their environment and to what's going on around them. So being on the same page, again, does not mean that you're always 100% agreeing. It can be different as long as in general we're trying to get to the same thing. So in the example of the playground, the play structure, the bigger concept was keeping the kids safe. Is this child safe? He said he was safe. I've seen him do it before. He looks fine. I'm okay with it. The other parent says, "Oh, no, 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 I don't feel like that's safe, so I'm going to ask him to come down." But the bigger picture is safety. So as long as we're keeping the kids safe, we can have different levels of what we can tolerate in regards to safety or how we go about assessing safety. But the bigger concept is to keep the kids safe. It's kind of it's a really hard to explain or to understand this difference when we're talking about being on the same page, but then it's kind of like, but we're not. So I just like to recommend that every couple, every healthy couple out there, talk to each other about what your big picture morals, values, needs, and wants for your children are. And make sure that you're on the same page there. And then as you're parenting, be tolerant when your partner does things that are not the way that you want them to be done. Now, again, if I'm yelling at my kids, I would like my partner to step in and say, "Whoa, that's not okay." But if I'm just doing something in a way that he wouldn't do, it's not okay to say, "Well, you really should do it this way." It's kind of like, "Well, when I give the kids a bath, I start with their head." And he's like, "Well, when I give the kids a bath, I start with their feet. So you really need to start with their feet." It's kind of like, "Well, why do I need to start with their feet if I want to start with their head?" It doesn't make a difference if you start at the head or the feet. You can rationalize why one is better than the other, or one is a healthier way to do this or a better way to do that. But ultimately, it really doesn't matter. So think about the things that do matter. You want to keep your children safe, right? So it's not okay to be on the same page when your spouse or partner is being violent, abusive, um, physically or emotionally like damaging. So we're talking about like screaming, hitting, belittling. All these things are 100% not okay. And when your spouse or partner looks to you and says, "You need to back me up here," you don't have to. Because what we're going to teach our kids is when that's happening, if you back your partner up, that means they need to take that and they need to accept it. And that's not true. So then it's your job to also model as a parent how to address things when they're not going the way you want them to. It's great to have disagreements in front of your kids as long as it's done appropriately. If you are yelling and screaming at each other, not such a good role model. But if you're having a very reasonable discussion about why bathing the baby from the head to the toes versus the toes to the head is, better or different, that's okay. Or, "Gosh, you know what? It sounds like you're getting a little bit loud. Let's take a break right now and come back to this." Like, that's completely appropriate. But we have to go into it understanding what the big picture is and understanding that you're both on the same side. You're not working against each other. You're trying to help each other. So then the question is like, how do you do that? Well, it all, in my opinion, it comes down to couples counseling, family therapy, or maybe even like a parenting coach. Because if you didn't have the models to teach you, then you're going to need some help. And so this can be quite complicated, but it doesn't have to be. So if you're having trouble getting on the same page, if you're having trouble parenting together, then let's do something about that. So today, just to recap, I talked about parenting, what it means to be on the same page, that it's not possible to have everything just completely identical, and that addressing parenting from like a bigger picture, like moral and values, means being on the same page. And then the details of how you do it, that can be different. And you need to be able to tolerate some of that difference as long as it's done appropriately. And if you have any difficulties, please do yourself and your kids a huge favor and go to couples counseling and or family counseling. Let us help you figure this out because it's not easy. Thank you very much for joining me today. Again, my name is Tracy Bevington. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and the owner and founder of Pacific Marriage and Family Therapy Network. We have offices in Manhattan Beach, Santa Monica, and Sherman Oaks. I really appreciate you joining me today. Please join me every Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific, where we'll be discussing a variety of different mental health issues and concerns, any kind of pointers or tips that I can give to you. If you have any suggestions that you'd like to make for future events, please take the time to list them in the comment section, and I will definitely do my best to address them. Thank you. See you next week.